Hey everybody, before I start tonight's video, I just want to let you know that tomorrow afternoon, after I finish work, I'm going to be going live on LinkedIn and hopefully Facebook as well. I've been accepted into the beta program for LinkedIn Live, which is very exciting, and I'm hoping to go on live roughly about 5 p.m. Central US time, which should be unfortunately about midnight European time. If some of you guys in Europe can join, that would be awesome, but I totally understand that late on a Friday night you might want to be in bed, or you might want to be out enjoying some time with your friends. I'll be doing an Ask Me Anything because I'm not sure exactly what format the video should take to start with, but I'd love to get on there and interact live with some of you guys and have a good conversation. Hope you enjoy the video today, and I'll speak to you all tomorrow. How's it going, everybody? Tactical Thursdays. This is our first time doing this, and I'm trying to focus down on these days in the sort of the business area, the technical areas, if you want to call them technical business areas, where we've had a lot of really good discussions, and I'm hoping that you're finding a lot of value out of what I'm sharing in these sort of technical business videos. And today I wanted to talk about presenting. It's something that I have to do quite regularly, both in a public or customer arena and also obviously internally in Tetra Pak as well. It's a huge thing that we have to do in order to make sure that we're communicating effectively with both customers, colleagues and potential customers and suppliers, etc. You know, pretty much anyone. And you also have to understand that presentations are going on in a lot of different forums as well. I do way more presentations remotely now than I did maybe 5-6 years ago. That's also because I live remotely from the office where I work. So most of my meetings are over the phone, whereas a lot of them might have been physical before. But generally, I think that that's the way that business is going, and that's a great thing because we're reducing the amount of travel that we have to do, which is great from a cost perspective and an environmental perspective, and usually from a time at home perspective as well. So I'm a big fan of that. But then when you know that when you're presenting online versus when you're presenting in person, there is a difference to what you're able to do and what you're able to communicate, even if you have video. People don't often look at your body language on the video so much, and I want to start with the talking presentations at a very high level. I don't want to go down into a lot of detail, but I think it's important that we consider what is the format that we're presenting through when we're presenting, not just what the message is that we're trying to get through. And we could talk about structuring presentations on another time, but let's think firstly about, what is the purpose of the presentation? What format are you presenting in? I'm assuming you're going to be using PowerPoint or Keynote or slides to present. And by format, I mean whether you're presenting in person, over the phone, over video, those being obviously the main three options. And then, I think you need to understand also who your audience is. I had a really good discussion with one of my colleagues this morning about how do you cater a presentation to different audiences and to particular decision makers, and why would you adapt your style to one decision maker versus another, and then what would you do if they were both in the room together, if they have very different ways of making decisions. And I'm smiling because that makes things always a bit of a challenge, but I think it's also an interesting challenge to try and be able to be successful and effective in those situations. And when you can do that, you're going to find a great deal of success in the presentations and in the interactions that you have with your colleagues. Some thoughts about those sort of things. Are you presenting upwards to decision makers, downwards to decision makers? Usually downwards is when you're trying to get buy-in to a change or buy into a decision that's already been made. Might sound easier, but often maybe even harder. When you're presenting upwards, obviously you're usually looking for approval, or you're looking for budget, or you're looking for support in a proposal to someone else who's going to make that decision, maybe higher up or laterally from that person. And I think you also need to make sure that you consider also where you're just presenting laterally to other people, which is usually in a networking capacity, or where you're trying to get stakeholder buy-in from other departments in order to support what you're doing or to provide resources to what you're doing. So those are sort of the general, encompassing parts of where you might be looking for a presentation. When you're looking between video and audio and live presentations, what are the things that you need to consider? Well, your body language is not going to come across over the phone obviously. So you have to use your voice a lot more. You have to attone your voice. You have to attenuate it. You have to use some expression. You also have to make sure that when you're presenting, you ask a lot more questions to ensure that the people who you're talking to are engaged. Now, I think that you should ask a lot more questions in your presentation when you're presenting in person as well, and you should be listening to the answers and writing them down, preferably on a whiteboard or a flip chart. I find those things are very good for creating engagement. You can use online tools like Slido if it's a very large presentation, but I'm assuming you've got quite a small audience here. I'm not talking about giving a speech to an auditorium full of people or something like that. I think that's a very different sort of setting. But those regular presentations that you need to make, you need to create engagement, and you need to make sure that you get understanding. Creating engagement you can do through questions and answers, open questions, not closed questions, obviously. And you can check for understanding using closed questions. Those are the two main functions of the questions that you want to be able to do. And that will help you tremendously in trying to navigate through where your stakeholders in that meeting, where the decision makers are on different parts of your story that you're telling. Now, that might give you a rough start. You might get a lot of questions, particularly from the open questions, but I think that quite often we tend to pack our presentations full of slides when it's not really needed, because what we need to get over is the high-level core message to start with, the detailed rational argument to back that up, much more summarized than we would normally do, because I think that the natural nature is to want to put together a lot of details to justify what you're proposing. And then the conclusion at the end, which matches basically the point at the start, right? That's how we're structuring our presentation. And then what we're trying to do is have that filler in the middle of justification and questions and answers. But by the time we get to the conclusion slide, we should have already concluded what's going to happen. And we should have done that in a way that we've structured. You can also go for the really quick presentation and then long discussion at the end. The problem is that by the time you get to the end of that, the people that you're talking to may have forgotten a lot of facts at the beginning of the presentation. Then you're going to have to go back, and then the discussion can get very confusing. So I think it's always nicer to try and take that as it happens in the moment, and rather than it happen to you, which can often happen in meeting rooms where, you suddenly start getting, a lot of questions, or you get taken down the sideline because of something that you've said in one of your slides. Try and make sure that you direct the question back with an open question, and make sure that you have the time for all of that, because you haven't got too many slides. So that's a few very brief things that I think about presenting and some of the things that I consider. I wouldn't say myself that I'm excellent at creating presentations. I often struggle with that. It's a part of my work that I'm always trying to improve. I think that when it comes to the delivery, the most important thing is to not consider yourself a presenter more than a facilitator of the discussion and a decision that you're trying to get out of the team that you have around you in that room. You need to consider also the function of the body language and how you're operating, and that you need to do a lot more work with your voice on the phone and on video than you would in person, and that therefore requires a lot more concentration about the message that you're trying to deliver. I hope this has been useful for you and valuable for you. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll speak to you all tomorrow.